I sat at the far end of the table, barely inside the glow of the overhead chandelier. Crystal glasses, overpriced wine, and polished silverware surrounded me. Every seat taken by someone in a tailored suit with a smirk too practiced to be genuine. Tara's family, her co-workers, her firm's partners, the kind of people who say things like, good optics, and actually mean it. I stabbed my steak, chewed slow, and kept quiet. Then Tara stood up. She held her glass high, real proud of herself, and said it loud enough to cut through all the chatter. Let's toast to Mark's latest venture, the one that still hasn't made a single dollar. Laughter, real laughter. Neil, her cousin with the thinning hair and ego the size of Manhattan, leaned over his plate. Maybe you should go back to delivering packages, Mark. At least you were useful then. Someone choked on their wine. A woman across the table actually wiped tears from her eyes from laughing so hard. I didn't flinch, didn't look up. Just took a slow sip of my drink. Let them enjoy it. Inside, my stomach burned. They thought they had me figured out. Washed-up dreamer, can't close a deal, still riding the high of some college startup that flopped. Tara had fed them all that garbage for years. The guy who had potential, but couldn't follow through. That's the story they liked. I watched Colin, her brother-in-law, VP of something or other at Yarrow Capital, pat Tara on the back like she'd just landed a killer punch. These people weren't family. They were a boardroom with blood ties. Mark's always chasing the next big thing, Tara added, swirling her wine. He just hasn't caught it yet. I bit the inside of my cheek, hard. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. I glanced down the line of faces, all of them smug, polished, full of fake concern and real judgment. I stayed calm, nodded, smiled even. Because what none of them knew, not Tara, not Neil, not even smug-ass Colin, was what I'd really been doing these past 3 years. I smiled again, raised my glass like a good sport, clinked it with the guy next to me. And in that moment, I made a promise to myself. They were going to choke on that laugh. Tara thought she had me pegged, the quiet husband with too many ideas and not enough follow-through. But that dinner toast, that didn't start out of nowhere. It built over time. I still remember the first night we met, some networking mixer in Midtown. She wore this white blazer like she owned the room, and in a way she did. Knew people, talked fast, dropped firm names like brands. Her confidence could knock a wall down. Me? I showed up late in a button-down from Target and sneakers that had seen better days. I said I was a freelance app developer, which technically was true, just not all of it. At that point, I was pulling double shifts, Amazon warehouse on weekends, tech support for a real estate office during the week, and then grinding nights on a system that I hadn't told a soul about. Security layers, deep-end, back-end stuff. The kind of thing hedge funds lose sleep over, but I didn't mention any of that. I told her I was still trying to figure it out. Humble beginnings, no big plans. I wanted to see something, if she'd be into me for me, not some padded resume or future net worth. She said I was refreshing. I said she talked too much. We laughed. I drove her home in my beat-up old Moine Corolla with the cracked windshield and old receipts stuffed in the cup holder, and she didn't flinch. That was the start. 3 months later, we were dating. By the end of the year, we were living together in a place I rented above a mechanic's shop in Astoria. She called it cozy. I called it what I could afford. Still didn't tell her about the real project. She thought I was playing around with basic app work, building things I'd probably never launch. I let her think that. We got married a year later, small wedding. Her dad footed the bill. I paid for the honeymoon. Cash. She never asked how. For a while, she was supportive. Brought me coffee during late nights, bragged about my grit to her friends. But that changed quick. About a year in, when the milestones didn't look shiny on the outside, when there weren't splashy announcements or App Store features, she started with the jabs. Like, still working on that secret project of yours, she'd say, laughing when her friends were around. He's trying to build the next Google from our living room. It was supposed to be funny, but it never landed that way. Once at a friend's engagement party, someone asked what I did, and before I could speak, she said, "Mark, oh, he's between things, mostly ideas." That one hit different. Not just because she said it, but because she said it while looking right at me, waiting for me to swallow it. I did, for a while. Because behind the scenes, I was building something real. I'd already locked in my first client, a mid-size fund out of Boston, Quiet deal, no PR. My name wasn't even on the paperwork. I ran the whole thing through a separate trust with a proxy CEO. Kept it clean, kept it invisible. From there, it grew. Slowly, strategically. All back-end infrastructure, encrypted data routing, real-time threat assessment, server-side defense systems. Not the kind of thing that gets applause at dinner parties, but the kind of thing that gets firms to pay six figures just to sit in the room with you. I didn't tell Tara any of it, not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't like who she became when she thought she knew more than me. She liked the story of me being a dreamer. It gave her something to joke about, something to feel superior over, something to explain to her friends when they asked, "What's it like being the breadwinner?" I let her tell that story. I smiled through it, bit my tongue. But in the hours she wasn't watching, when the lights were off and the house was quiet, I was designing something airtight, something they couldn't see coming. They all laughed like I was losing. But I hadn't even shown my cards yet. While Tara kept talking about how I needed structure, she pulled some strings and got me a temp gig in her family's firm. Yarrow Capital, IT support, contract role. Just a warm body to fix printers and reset passwords. She called it helping, said it'd get me back into a rhythm. I smiled, said thanks. Took the job. What no one at Yarrow knew was that I already had a working system in place that made theirs look prehistoric. I'd been quietly testing proprietary back-end tools on live financial networks for over a year. No downtime, no leaks. Real-time diagnostics, active threat suppression, bulletproof stuff. And here I was, plugging in Ethernet cables for guys who couldn't read a server map without a coffee in hand. Colin, Tara's brother-in-law and Yarrow's golden boy, walked around like he built the firm from scratch. Truth was, he was writing other people's work. I watched him take credit for features he didn't write, security protocols he barely understood. I even had to debug his code once after he tanked a system update that locked out half the senior staff. He didn't thank me, didn't even look up from his phone. That was the vibe at Yarrow. Top-heavy, lazy at the top, exhausted at the bottom. Junior analysts grinding until midnight, while the senior execs left at 5 to hit the golf course or some steakhouse downtown. I kept my head down, wore the temp badge, answered tickets. Meanwhile, my startup, under a different name, different entity, signed 2 new hedge funds that month. Quietly, we were stealing clients out from under firms just like Yarrow. We weren't loud. We didn't advertise. We offered something better. Infrastructure you could bet the house on. The secret? I separated everything. My real name wasn't on any filings. I ran the whole thing through a trust registered in Nevada, with a CEO who looked the part. Ivy League, sharp jaw, fake smile. He was my front. I paid him well to keep it that way. Every day I showed up at Yarrow, listened to Neil make stupid jokes about people who peaked in college, or Tara teasing me at lunch about my tech projects. I just smiled, ate my sandwich, went home and pushed another update that locked in 6 figures from a new client. I wasn't just building something, I was watching how they operated, how they ignored the interns, how they shut down new ideas in meetings, how Colin's presentations were stitched together by a team of analysts he never gave credit to, how Neil, who didn't know Python from PowerPoint, still had a say in IT decisions. And they all thought I was just Tara's charity case. The guy she kept around out of pity, a fixer-upper. That worked in my favor. The lower they set the bar, the easier it was to move under their radar. Colin would stroll past my desk, clap me on the back, say stuff like, "Hang in there, Mark. Some guys just need a little longer to figure it out." I'd nod, smile, then go home and read over quarterly reports from the hedge funds my tech was securing. What they never asked, because they never cared enough to, was where I went after hours, or why I never used my own laptop at work, or why I kept my phone in airplane mode when I was in the building. They didn't question anything, and every smug comment they tossed my way, every time they spoke over me in meetings or acted like I was just Tara's little project, that just added fuel. They didn't see what was coming, but I did, and I was already mapping out exactly how I'd bury them with it. So I pushed it further, created a whole new identity, Matt Brooks, neutral name, clean background, a basic LinkedIn profile, fake Gmail, no mutual connections. Built a modest resume, freelance data work, volunteer consulting, a couple certification programs. Entry level, nothing flashy, Then I applied to Yarrow Capital's junior data analyst position. Yeah, bottom of the barrel, just wanted to see how deep the rot ran from inside the well. A week later, I got the invite. Group interview. 8 of us in a bland conference room with fluorescent lights and a crusty Keurig in the corner. Folding chairs, lukewarm water bottles. Cheap as hell for a firm that claimed to manage over $1 billion in assets. Colin walked in with his shiny shoes and smug face. Neil followed, sleeves rolled, acting like he was late because of something important. They didn't recognize me. Not even a flicker. Matt Brooks was invisible to them. They sat across from us, fake smiles plastered on, sizing everyone up before a single question got asked. Neil started. Matt, you've been out of work a while, huh? Think you can handle actual deadlines? I smiled. That's why I'm here. Colin flipped through my resume like it was junk mail. Volunteer consulting? He said, grinning as he read the line out loud. For who? Your cousin's lemonade stand? Laughter. One of the other candidates chuckled nervously, then looked down fast like he regretted it. I stayed quiet. Let it sit. For the next 20 minutes, they grilled us like we were beneath them. No real technical questions, just posturing. Power plays. They kept cutting people off mid-answer. Neil mocked a woman's university, said he thought that place shut down. Colin interrupted a guy mid-sentence to check his phone, then asked the same question again, like it was some kind of test. It wasn't an interview, it was a stage, and we were props for their egos. When it got back to me, Colin leaned forward. So Matt, what makes you think you belong at Yarrow? I held eye contact. You said this firm values innovation, right? He smirked. We do. Then I guess I'm curious how you recognize it when you see it. His jaw tightened. Didn't like that. Neil shifted in his seat like he smelled something weird. Colin cleared his throat. We'll be in touch. I stood, shook hands with the woman beside me, and walked out before they could dismiss me. Out in the parking garage, I sat in my car for a while, just breathing. It wasn't about me. Not really. I could have worn a disguise and handed them a Nobel Prize. They still would have laughed, because the second they thought someone had no power, they treated them like trash. It wasn't just arrogance, it was policy. I wasn't angry, I was clear. They disrespected everyone who wasn't already in their circle. Anyone who couldn't help them climb, they stepped on. Period. And now, I had exactly what I came for. Proof. That interview told me everything I needed to know. They weren't just arrogant, they were rotten. And if I was going to take them down, I needed proof. So I started building a team. Not the kind you brag about on LinkedIn. Quiet people, professionals who knew how to keep their mouths shut. 2 forensic accountants, a pair of data engineers I trusted from my network, and 2 private investigators who didn't care whose name was on the checks as long as they cleared. We met in a rented office above a strip mall in Queens. No sign on the door, just a deadbolt and blackout curtains. Every wall had corkboards, receipts pinned, sticky notes connecting one name to another. My laptop sat in the middle of it all, running encrypted storage with backups mirrored in 3 states. The first thread came from a whistleblower email. A junior analyst at Yarrow sent an anonymous tip about strange transfers in the system. My accountants dug into it. Within a week, they found fake vendor invoices billed for consulting that never happened. Hundreds of thousands moving into shell accounts tied to Colin. From there, it snowballed. Travel logs showed Neil booking personal trips to Scottsdale, then billing them as client development. We pulled flight manifests, matched them with expense reports, same dates, same card, but no clients anywhere near those destinations. Then came the real kicker, siphoned client data. My engineers traced back-end traffic showing proprietary analytics from Yarrow servers being copied and funneled into a rival wealth firm in Arizona. Colin and Neil were packaging client insights, selling them under the table, and pocketing the cash. That wasn't incompetence, that was criminal. And Tara, she wasn't clean either. One of the investigators followed her digital trail. Emails sent late at night, attachments labeled draft or notes. When we opened them, they were internal slide decks, performance reports, even pipeline projections, all forwarded to a college friend of hers who happened to be running a competing shop out of Boston. She called it helping an old buddy. I called it espionage. I didn't blow up, didn't confront her. Instead, I recorded every call, screenshotted every attachment, and stacked it neatly in a digital vault with timestamps and IP addresses. On the surface, I was still the quiet husband, still showing up to family barbecues, flipping burgers, nodding along to Colin's boring golf stories. Neil would crack open a beer and ask if I was still chasing unicorns. Tara rolled her eyes when I talked about late nights on side projects. I played my part perfectly. But every smirk, every jab, every dismissive comment only sharpened my focus. They thought they were laughing at me. Really, they were laughing while I built the case that would bury them. I remember one barbecue especially. Colin had too much whiskey, leaned across the picnic table and said, "You know, Mark, some guys just aren't built for this world. Nothing wrong with that, but Tara deserves a winner." I smiled, took a sip of my beer. "Guess we'll see how it plays out," I said. Meanwhile, in my head, I was already picturing the folders lined up. His name, Neil's name, Tara's name. All tagged, color-coded, airtight. The deeper we dug, the worse it got. Fraudulent reimbursements, kickbacks hidden in family accounts, misappropriated client funds. It wasn't just greed, it was reckless. They were lighting their own firm on fire, and nobody at Yarrow had the spine to call it out. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about payback. It wasn't even about respect anymore. It was about showing everyone exactly what kind of parasites had been sitting at the top of that firm. And when the time came, I wasn't just going to expose them, I was going to replace them. It was 10 a.m. sharp when I stepped through the glass doors of Yarrow Capital. No badge, no borrowed access, just me, Mark Rowan. In a tailored suit they'd never seen before, holding a leather briefcase they never thought I'd earn. Reception froze. The front desk girl, Lauren I think, blinked twice before stammering, "Can I help?" "No need," I said, heading straight for the elevators. "I'm expected." The quarterly partner meeting was on the 23rd floor. Conference room A, the one with the skyline view and ridiculous mahogany table no one used unless a client was in town. This time, I was the client, and the storm. When I walked in, it took a few seconds, just long enough for them to register the face, and then realize they couldn't laugh it off. Colin was already mid-sentence, standing by the projector like he ran the place. His mouth literally stayed open when he saw me walk past him and pull out the head chair. Neil blinked hard, gave me this twitchy little smile like he wasn't sure if it was a prank. Tara's chair? Empty. She didn't even bother showing up. I set the briefcase on the table, snapped it open, took out a single stack of sealed folders. "Let's get something clear," I said, loud and calm. "This isn't just a partner meeting." I slid the folders out in a clean row. "It's an audit." Dead silence. I stood, clicked the remote, and the wall screen behind me lit up. One by one, I opened slides, labeled emails, flagged transactions, PDF call logs. "Colin, you funneled analytics to Rivalis Capital between April and August. Sold proprietary insights for personal gain. You masked them as vendor invoices, filed under third-party tech consultation." Colin opened his mouth. I didn't stop. "Neil, you billed over $75,000 in travel expenses to locations with no client presence. I've got airline logs, GPS data, receipts for golf resort stays, and matching internal calendar invites showing you were not where you claimed to be." Neil tried to laugh. This is ridiculous." I clicked again. "Page 14. Your voice recorded. You literally say, 'Client doesn't need to know we reuse the models.'" No one spoke. I turned toward the group. 10 people, all of them pale, stiff, quiet as hell. This company's been bleeding because of the people in this room. Because the top protects itself while the bottom does the actual work. You pushed out talent, silenced whistleblowers, spent money that didn't belong to you. One guy started shifting in his chair, like he might speak. I pointed at him. "You signed off on it, don't even try it." Then I pulled out the final folder, the thick one. This includes Tara's email trail, 11 instances of proprietary material forwarded to an outside competitor. Company devices, after hours. Every message is time-stamped and geotagged. I paused. Let that sink in. She's not here because she knew what was coming. Nobody moved. I leaned forward. "Effective immediately. You're all done." Colin pushed back. "You can't—" I dropped the final card. "I own 62% of Yarrow Capital," I said, "via Blue Signal Tech, which just finalized acquisition last week. You missed the filings because I ran them through your blind spots. That's what happens when you build firewalls around the wrong people. I slid the termination papers down the table. Read them, sign them. Security's outside the door. A few still looked like they were waiting for someone to jump out and yell, "Gotcha!" But no one came. Because the joke wasn't on me anymore. It was on every single person in that room who mistook silence for weakness. Once the last signature hit the paper and the door shut behind Neil, I didn't even sit back down. I walked straight out of that conference room and headed for the executive wing. By noon, I had HR lock out every partner who'd been complicit. Accounts frozen, badges deactivated. If you were in the room that day and didn't speak up, you were out. No second chances. Then I made the first real call that mattered, to people I actually trusted. I brought in a new exec team, folks I'd worked with for years through Blue Signal, smart, sharp, ethical. People who didn't care about boardroom politics or who sat at the head of the table. They cared about building something that didn't rot from the inside out. The changes came fast. We promoted 2 junior analysts, Maya and Devin, who had flagged irregularities a year ago and got shut down by Colin. Both of them thought they were being fired when I called them in. Instead, I handed each a leadership badge and told them they were now running the data integrity unit. Maya cried. Devin just said, "It's about damn time." We rolled out strict compliance protocols, full transparency dashboards, open ledger audits. Every division got an anonymous reporting line with direct access to internal counsel. No more closed-door deals, no more untouchables. Then we stripped the brand. Yarrow was dead. The name, the site, the letterhead, all of it gone by the end of the week. In its place, we launched Signal Core Capital, same firm, new blood, new bones. I walked the halls that first Monday under the new banner. People looked up from their desks when I passed, not out of fear, but curiosity. Some even smiled, not the fake corporate kind, real smiles. One guy, middle-aged, wore a wrinkled button-down and looked like he hadn't had a peaceful workday in a year. As I passed, he nodded and said, "I think we've all been waiting for this." That stuck with me. The break room, once dead silent during lunch, had chatter again. The junior staff didn't scatter when a senior exec walked by. I caught 2 interns showing off dashboards they had built, and getting credit for it. The whole energy shifted. Not overnight, not perfectly. But you could feel it. People didn't just come to work. They showed up like they finally mattered. And for the first time in that building, I believed it too. By Friday, the headlines hit like shrapnel. Yarrow Capital implodes after surprise takeover. Major asset shakeup exposes fraud, insider theft. Anonymous whistleblower behind corporate uprising. They didn't know it was me, not yet, but they would. Colin went first. Filed for bankruptcy within 3 weeks. His accounts were drained, not just by legal fees, but by the sudden stop in off-the-books money. The Arizona firm dropped him like a hot rock. Neil got served with 2 separate lawsuits from ex-clients. One of them was a retired surgeon who lost almost $500,000 because Neil repackaged old analytics and never disclosed risk thresholds. Another was a small business fund that was suing for breach of fiduciary duty. He tried to spin it, tried to claim it was common practice and not malicious. I sent the plaintiff's attorney 10 more files. He shut up real quick after that. Tara, though, she played the long game, pretended she had no clue, claimed she was manipulated and just forwarding materials for feedback. Said she never knew how they were being used. Didn't matter. The emails didn't lie. IP logs, timestamps, replies from her friend with actual strategy notes. She knew exactly what she was doing. We settled in private. She got nothing. No stake, no stock, no payout. Just her last name, and she was welcome to keep it. HR scrubbed her from all company assets. Photos, press releases, even her blog posts from Yarrow's old website, gone. And word spread fast. Wall Street circles are small, smaller than people think. Recruiters blacklisted the whole crew within days. Colin tried applying at some boutique firm in Chicago, didn't even get a call back. Neil pushed his resume to 3 firms in Jersey and got ghosted by all of them. Tara tried to freelance as a consultant. Nobody bid. Her old college friend, she stopped replying once subpoenas started rolling in. Then one night, I got a text from an old buddy I hadn't heard from in years. Just a photo. Neil standing outside a data center in Jersey. Night shift badge, baggy hoodie, coffee in hand. No Rolex, no tailored suit, just a hollow stare and a security lanyard. My friend wrote, "Guess the comeback tour's off." I didn't smile, didn't gloat, but I saved the picture, not for revenge, just to remind myself what happens when people think no one's watching. 6 months later, I sat in the corner office of Signal Corps Capital. Glass walls, exposed steel beams. The place had weight to it, not flashy, not cold, just solid. It was after hours, but half the floor was still lit up. Teams huddled around whiteboards, bouncing ideas, running simulations. No one's badge got scanned just to clock hours. They stayed because they wanted to. We just closed a joint contract with a Fortune 100 firm, predictive security AI, the same core system I started building back when I was still being laughed at over dinner. But that wasn't what got to me. What hit hardest was seeing people finally treated right. Maya, the junior analyst Colin used to cut off mid-sentence, now ran our compliance division. Devin led predictive modeling. Both had real offices, real authority, and a team that backed them. No more fake respect, no more closed doors. I sat back, watching them through the glass, and saw a kid, maybe 21, intern badge, nervous energy, walk into a meeting and take a seat like he belonged there. No hesitation, just showed up. That was the shift. No more hierarchy games. No more ego contests. If you brought value, you had a seat at the table. Simple as that. A few nights back, one of the janitors stopped by my door just as I was packing up. Older guy, thick accent, always nodded when he passed. He said, "I don't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to say thanks." I looked up, confused. For what? For saying hi. Every morning, most people don't. That hit me harder than any deal memo ever could. Because that's what we built here. Not just a company, but a place where everyone got seen. Sometimes late at night, I'd catch myself thinking about that dinner table. The snide jokes, the smug looks, the wine glass in Tara's hand shaking with laughter. I don't feel rage anymore, just clarity. That version of me, the one they mocked, he built this. Quietly. While they ran their mouths, I ran the code. While they bragged, I stacked contracts. And while they thought they were tearing me down, I was laying the foundation, not for revenge, for legacy. My name is Mark Rowan, and I don't need applause. I just need a clear view of what's next. Would you have kept quiet like Mark, or called them out earlier? Drop your answer in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.